Hello, this is Jedd Hafer at the Love and Logic Institute, and welcome to the podcast. I am here today without, you will notice very quickly, Dr. Charles Fay. He is traveling today and speaking to some lucky people in the state of Texas. So if anything's going to make sense today, the pressure is on me. That's a lot of pressure. But thank you for joining us, and we're going to talk today about being afraid to upset our kids. And this is a big deal, and it's really foundational in terms of understanding what love and logic is all about. You've probably run into this, especially if you're a parent. I know we have professionals and parents, and then those lucky people who double duty and are dealing with their own kids, but also other people's kids. I'm in that camp, and blessed to be so, by the way. But you know this phenomenon where you are about to make a decision that's going to upset a kid. You are about to say or do something that's going to cause a negative reaction, and we can get conditioned, starting especially when kids are really little, that our job is to make them always happy. If they're crying, we want to do something to stop that, right? If they're in distress, we want to do something to make everything better. And that comes from a perfectly good place. It comes from the place of infancy. When they are infants and they're tiny, they just have one way in the universe to get their needs met. And what is that? Text mom. Right? We have a diaper situation here, LOL, the little poop emoji. Probably not. We're not there yet as a society, but we are definitely headed in that direction. No, what is the one thing that an infant can do to get a need met? Cry. And it's a special cry. You know that. If you've ever heard that sound, an infant with a true need, that is a special kind of a cry that I believe, I can't prove this scientifically, but I believe that we are built to not be able to ignore that sound. Right? Let's just say hypothetically, you're on like an airplane from Chicago to Denver, and it's right behind you in seat 13B, we'll just say hypothetically. You cannot ignore that sound. Right? Your instincts kick in. Oh, there's a baby that needs something. I should pay attention. I should do something about that. And that's the way it works when they're infants. They have a need. They express that need. The need gets met. And that's the way it's supposed to go. And that's forming foundations of trust and understanding cause and effect. And so love and logic, and I think really all wise experts would say the same thing. When they're infants and they have a need, you meet the need. There's no reason to wait or train them. Just they got a need, you meet it. They're hungry, you feed them. And they need to be held and rocked, and they need motion, they need love, they need affection. All of that stuff. When they're little babies, it's not in question. It's actually kind of easy. Having a little baby is not easy. But the decision-making process is easy because you don't have to think very much. You just say, oh, they have a need, I go meet it. And that's pretty normal, it's pretty logical, it makes a lot of sense. Then something happens. They don't stay infants forever. Pretty soon they get a little more advanced, and they get to a place, I remember one of my sons got to where he could duplicate that urgent need crying sound, and you go run in the room and he goes, ha 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 ha. He was fine. He just wanted to see if he could get you to come running. And so now at this point, they're expressing not just needs, they're still expressing needs, but they're also expressing wants. And they are starting to become, even before the age of 1, they're starting to become capable of figuring some things out by themselves and even taking care of themselves in some ways. Be that, figuring out how to solve little problems. I get stuck and I'm crawling around, and can I get past this? And once again, our instinct there from when they're infants, especially for parents, I think this is true of all adults who are caregivers though, we want to at some point run over and fix whatever the problem is. Even small, what love and logic would call affordable problems, we want to run over there and fix it and be the hero and make everything better, make everything right. And that's healthy when they're infants. How healthy is it when they turn 16? If we're running over, especially if they go, wham, and we run over and solve the problem. Nah, not very healthy. How about when they're 22? We can see that gradually there should be this letting go of some control and this handing over of capability, autonomy, control to this little precious young person as he or she is growing and maturing. It should happen that way on this very safe and gradual basis. They need to start having some mistakes. They need to start having some problems that they need to figure out on their own that I don't run right over and solve for them. And this is the hardest part, they need to have some upset. They need to have some times where things don't go their way and they have to deal with that and learn, this is really key, that that's not the end of the world, that they can recover from that, that, I was upset, but now I'm okay. I wasn't very happy, but now I'm doing better. That is part of normal development of our little minds. As we're growing up, we learn things don't always go our way. Sometimes we get upset. And as an adult, the temptation can be there that, oh, she's upset, I got to do something. He's upset, I got to do something. Or even worse, as they start to develop more understanding, as they start to develop language, and they can learn to say and do things to manipulate our emotions, I've got to prevent them from ever getting upset in the first place. And this is where we really fall off the rails. Do you fall off rails or do you just go off rails? I don't know, but we get off track. I think my job is to make sure my kid never gets upset in the first place. That is really the recipe for raising a miserable human being. I'm going to do all these things to prevent. I'm going to look off down the road and say, oh, that might upset him, so we won't even attempt that. Or that might get her upset, so we'll do lots of micromanaging to mitigate this. And we've all done this to some degree, but you can see it being really destructive. I know families where they've changed teachers 3 and 4 times in a school year, at the elementary level, or as the kids get older, they're changing their schedule and pulling them in and out of classes after, a matter of a few days. And it's one thing to say after a few days, this class is not working, this is not going to be a good fit for some reason. I have 2 kids that have IEPs. So their education plan is individualized, and there's different accommodations and different steps that we take to try to maximize their learning. And certainly there's a time and a place to say, this isn't working out, this situation isn't working out. But if it's happening multiple times in a short period of time, what does that tell us? Probably I'm stuck in this cycle of my kid doesn't like it, so I have to change it. My kid doesn't like it, so I have to fix it. This will happen with restaurants, places to eat. No, we can't go there. So-and-so doesn't like that place. Nope, not there either. Nope, not there either. It's one thing to have a favorite and say, oh, can I have my favorite? It's another thing to, nope, I got to rule out 9 options because I don't like any of those. Then we're starting to create this entitlement that Jim Fay talks about. We're starting to create this hostile dependency where you're doing everything for me, and somewhere deep down that doesn't feel very good. So I start to get mad, and I can't turn that anywhere but on you. In many cases, it's the parent who's doing everything to make sure that their child is happy. That's also the parent who's enduring an awful lot of unhappy and wrathful kinds of feelings coming out toward them. So what can we do about this? Honestly, I think kids who don't handle upset really well, in many cases, it's that they lack practice. And they might need some more practice in getting upset. And I've even said that to kids. Wow, not getting your ways. You're really not handling that as well as maybe you could. And so we need to work on that. I think you need more practice not getting your way. And I'm not saying that to be stinky and snotty. I really am trying to help the kids' awareness of, oh, wow, yeah, every time I don't get my way, I get upset. And how about a lecture where we go, well, that's part of life. Life isn't fair. We've all had that. It's beyond temptation. We've probably all done it. And that's a perfectly true and legitimate thing to say to a kid. But in the heat of the moment, when they are upset, how well do they hear that? How well do they internalize that and say, oh, yes, Mom, you've really made a solid point there. I do need, no, probably not. So probably fewer words in these situations, less lecturing, less explaining, and we're letting our actions, our loving actions, we're letting our loving actions do more of the talking, more of the teaching. And what does that look like and sound like? It's really empathy, which is so much nonverbal on our face and in our body language and in the tone of the few words and sounds that we might make. There's this real loving empathy that says, oh, I'm rooting for you. I want the best for you. And this is hard, but also I believe in you. At the very, very same time, if any kid can get through a moment like this, an upsetting time like this, it's you, and I believe in you. I used to add with my empathy, I used to try to add some kind of little qualifier or perspective adding phrases. So I might say something like, wow, you're really upset this morning. Or, siblings going at each other. And, I hate hers. Oh, you're really frustrated with so-and-so right now. And I'd add those little, this morning, implying what? Oh, by this afternoon, you guys will be buddies again. Or by later today, everything will be sunshine again, which is often the case, right? So empathy, and then you can add that little ingredient of perspective. I wouldn't do it every time, but when I'm just acknowledging and validating the feelings of this upset person, I might say something like, right now, or today, or something that implies it's not going to stay this way always. But empathy is really the key, like so many other things, and like we say with all the love and logic skills, empathy is really that firm foundation that everything else is built on. And it might seem counterintuitive. Well, I've got this kid who's upset all the time. I need to show them that it's no big deal. And so I shouldn't be giving them a lot of empathy. Love and logic says everything we do, we lead with empathy. It doesn't mean over dramatic and over validating. And it's one thing to validate feelings. It's another thing to validate behavior. So it's one thing to say, oh, I could see how that would be really upsetting. It's another thing to say, and it was fine for you to throw that truck across the room. It's fine for you to throw that Matchbox car at your classmate. No, we're not validating behavior or bad decisions. We're validating the fact that you're human and you can get upset. But just like all of us, the expectation is just because we're upset doesn't mean we get to make bad decisions. Just because I'm mad doesn't mean I get to abuse somebody, take it out on my kid or my dog or anybody. We don't get to do bad things just because we're angry. And, if you've ever been in a courtroom, and a judge says, here's what you're accused of. And if it were a teenager in court and they said, yeah, but so-and-so made me really mad. No good judge is going to say, oh, well, gosh, I didn't realize you were mad. Well, okay, you can go. Case dismissed. No, we are expected to still make good decisions even when we're upset. How else can we help with this phenomenon? Modeling. Kids are watching us. They are really watching us, especially maybe in situations where we're prone to mess up, which for me would be just all the time. But I'm thinking about driving. And maybe somebody cuts me off. And it's one thing to not overreact to that. It's another thing maybe to do some intentional value setting here, some intentional modeling where I say, boy, I get frustrated when stuff like that happens. But you know what? I'm going to take some breaths. And I'm going to realize this is, not the end of the world. And I'm going to calm down. I feel like doing something else. Maybe I feel like honking or communicating with this person in some other way. But I'm just going to take some breaths and realize, hey, this will pass and it's not worth it. I'm not going to let this make me make a bad decision. So however that would come out from you sounding natural, probably sound better than I just did, but coping out loud. We'll sometimes refer to this as the kids hear us coping with a frustration. Maybe something at work that was frustrating or something that happened on the roads that was frustrating. Anything, they hear us coping and handling that. And out loud, we might even sort of let them in on the movie that's going on inside our head. Boy, that was frustrating. And I'm just going to take some breaths. Feel like doing some other stuff, but I'm just going to take a minute and make a better decision. So how that looks for you You get to really customize that, but it's great when they're younger, when kids are younger, and they see and hear you coping out loud with frustration. How about mistakes? How about if we're working on something together and I make a mistake, and instead of them seeing me overreact to that, they can see that I can just kind of laugh and say, oh boy, I sure blew it there, and we'll try again. And that I have this real healthy attitude toward failure, that it's not final, but that it can actually be informative. I have this real healthy attitude toward mistakes, that they don't have to defeat me. And it's not the end all be all. I can make plenty of mistakes, actually, and come out learning on the other side of those mistakes, wiser, maybe even with a better attitude. If nothing else, not defeated and, oh, woe is me, this is the end of the world. I worry about those kids if they see the adults around them constantly not coping or not coping well with adversity, and everything is the end of the world. That's my model if I'm the kid, and I start thinking, well, maybe everything is really pretty bad. So we have to have, in some cases, I have to have a little bit of a poker face or an underreaction, at least emotional negative reactions that I'm showing my kid. Doesn't mean I never get mad, doesn't mean that I'm not human, but I'm not supposed to become a jerk just because I'm upset, right? In my anger, I'm not supposed to turn into a bad person, a negative person, a defeated person, a person who's going to be verbally abusive or screaming or modeling some kind of unhealthy coping. So again, basic idea, we're going to get upset, we the adults. It's okay for kids to see that, and it's really healthy for them to see us dealing with it in healthy ways. And you get to decide, again, what that looks like. I'm a big fan of breathing because I like oxygen. And it's one of those things that you can do just about anywhere, unless you're like in space, and your spacesuit is malfunctioning or whatever. But most of the places I go, you can breathe, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to interrupt. There's no props involved. I can do it just about anywhere, anytime. And people, if I'm around people that I don't want to necessarily know that I'm really struggling, I can do that without putting on a big show. So, big fan of breathing, big fan of positive self-talk and affirmations and things we can tell ourselves over and over in our heads. All of that, hopefully the kids see. They see adversity, and they see adults handling that adversity well. They see mistakes. They see adults handling their own mistakes with grace. And then certainly when it comes to our kids, we want to model that their mistakes are not the end of the world. We want to model an attitude of resilience. And I've said that phrase before, but if any kid can figure this out, it's you. If any kid can handle this or overcome this, it's you. And I don't say it in a lame, cliche kind of a way. I say it because I really believe in you, kid. So I hope that is helpful. This one, we apologize if this one got a little too practical. We promise to get back to more silliness and nonsense in future podcasts. But we felt like this was an important one. It is a great fear, I think, of every parent of upsetting my kid, but I also need to realize that, boy, that's part of the learning process. If they're learning to walk, falling down is part of that process of learning to walk. If they're learning to talk, they're going to say a lot of words that are nonsense and babble words. They're learning to tie their shoes, they're going to have some failures. They're learning to ride a bike, they're going to have some failures. We root for those. We root for those times of affordable mistakes and struggle because we know that's what makes us stronger as human beings and ultimately happier and healthier human beings. So go against what can be our instinct in the short term. I need to have a kid who's never upset. Actually, no, I want a kid who's happy in the long run, that has a happy overall life, which means he or she is going to have plenty of times of feeling sad, frustrated, upset, even heartbroken. I don't try to make those things happen, but I allow my kid to experience that because I love them. That takes a lot of love. To let somebody experience those hard times because in the short run, I could fix it, I could make that better, but I know, just like so many other things, in the long run, this is going to be healthier for my kid. Short-term pain, long-term gain. That's one of those things I'll say to myself over and over in my head. We so appreciate you watching and listening to these podcasts. We so appreciate your support. Please stop by loveandlogic.com or call us Monday through Friday and get a real person at 1-800-338-4065. We'll talk to you again soon.